All right, we are so live. All right, hello viewers. Welcome to the program, to your favorite program. My name is Lovejoy. The program being Meet the Press with Lovejoy. And on the program, we talk about everything and anything. And we invite everyone from everywhere. Our main goal is to ensure that everybody gets a fair share of the media. We want to ensure that everybody is represented in as far as their voices is concerned on our platforms. On the program as well, we invite people from all walks of life. And before we go anywhere, we want to take this moment to thank our health professionals who are keeping us healthy, who are giving us everything during this time, during this COVID time. We hope and pray that they are protected in everything that they're doing. And we hope you who are watching are also taking measures to ensure that you do not contract the COVID-19. If you do, please ensure that you are in a safe place. So today, keeping up with our tradition, today on the program we have invited two young women, if I can call them that, who are doing tremendous jobs in their in their respective fields. We have got Rosaline from Kenya. She's joining us all the way from Kenya. Rosaline, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you for joining us. And we've got Maureen. She's based in Kwekwe. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves in just a minute. I'll start with you, Rosaline.
Lovejoy, thank you for having me. And of course, it's amazing always to be with Maureen on our platform. My name is Rosie Norwa. I'm founder and director on a foundation that works with rural widows in Western Kenya. And COVID has hit us, as it has hit everybody else. And we are doing what we can to serve our communities. So thank you for having me.
All right. As the program progresses, we want you to talk about the kind of work that you're doing. Now, Maureen, please take us through, just briefly introduce yourself.
Okay. Thank you, Lovejoy, for honoring me with an invite to join you on this show. And I love talking about anything and everything and nothing sometimes. And I'm always glad to get the platform together with Rosaline. I've been called a lot of things, but for today, I want to call myself a community member of the Mbizo community in Kwekwe. I am Zimbabwean, and I am someone who's an active citizen and the founder of Community Hope Trust, an initiative born from the COVID crisis to solve the crisis of inequalities, educational inequalities, that is. Yeah. So I'm happy to be here. Yeah.
Okay. And just before we go, viewers, if you've got your comments, you've got contributions on this topic that we're talking about, please feel free to post your contributions and we'll post them so that they are seen by everybody. Right. I'll start with Rosaline. How's Kenya? Briefly, as far as COVID is concerned.
I want to answer it in two ways. We thought 2 weeks ago that we were doing well, the numbers were going down. And right now, this last 2 weeks, the numbers have been coming up. And there needs to be a presidential address coming this week. So we don't know whether we are going to go into a second lockdown or not. But I think the people also need more education. So people, especially rural counties, are still not as careful as city dwellers. So there needs to be more to be done so that the numbers can go up. Generally, we are okay. We are in a forced referendum situation. So we are discussing a likely referendum coming up in the country. And also we are looking as grassroots community organization and women leaders, how our voice can be heard. So we are fighting gender representation and COVID pandemic.
And Maureen, we are in the same geographical location, but being in different cities, I would want to know how Kwekwe is doing in as far as COVID response is concerned.
Yeah, I think Kwekwe, in terms of the numbers for COVID infections, deaths, recoveries, almost mimics what is happening nationally, where we have a very low rate of infection and a very low death rate. And as far as Kwekwe is concerned, I think we do not have a centralized statistical information platform where we can get disaggregated data, and as far as infections recorded within the local community.
Okay, all right. We seem to be having difficulties with Maureen there with the internet.
Rely
We hope.
on that information from a national perspective. But I think what hello, I'm back.
Yes.
I'm sorry
Yes,
for
we
the
can hear
technical glitch. So I think, Lovejoy, you can attest to that, the COVID pandemic is real, but Zimbabwe having gone through a number of health crises such as cholera, the COVID pandemic has caused less havoc than any other crisis, but more havoc has been caused when it comes to socioeconomic issues. When it comes to livelihoods, when it comes to access to opportunities that can allow you opportunities to either feed your family or gain access to critical fundamental human needs such as education for children and food and employment for a lot of other people. So yeah, we are more
Right.
under threat from the social economic impacts of COVID than the COVID in itself because of the law
All right.
enforcement.
Speaking about education, Maureen, I understand you are doing something for children. You've got an organization that you started, Community of Trust. Please take us
Oh yeah.
through. What is it about? What have you been doing from the time that we went into lockdown up until now?
Oh God, that makes me smile. It's like a silver lining and a very dark cloud, and which brings you hope in a very chaotic situation. So, as you know, from in Zimbabwe, we started our lockdowns in March, and schools were supposed to open in May, on the 5th of May precisely. But because of the restrictions that came with the lockdowns, schools were unable to open their spaces for children for obvious and justifiable reasons of safety. And a lot of the government and a lot of other stakeholders were fighting to ensure that children can plug into alternative learning platforms such as e-learning. But where I stay, a small mining community, which is characterized by high poverty rates and high informal employment, a lot of children could not afford this luxury that other children could afford. So this sparked a conversation between me and my neighbors, and the conversation turned into actual action, where a community collectively pulled in their resources, that is their space, that is their time, as well as their expertise, to ensure that children continue getting an education in a very safe way, but in a way that everybody who might not be rich enough to tap into online platforms of education could. So what happened is that we started off with about 38 children. Different parents or community members volunteered spaces where we could ensure that children learn safely, of course, guided by the whole guidelines of safety and sanitization and wearing masks and all of that. And these numbers have since grown. To date, we are now
Okay. Maureen seems to be having problems with her network. Okay, so
started as a one street initiative, has grown into 3 streets. And what started with oh God, okay. I'm so sorry. My connection continues to come
no,
in
it's
and out.
fine.
This is exactly what inspired the initiative. The fact that not everybody could afford to plug in into high quality access for learning. And I guess technology is trying to emphasize and remind me where we started from. So what I was saying is that the initiative has grown from 38 children from May, and is now catering 3 streets and over 114 children, 60% of which are girls attending from the primary school going age to secondary school age. So in Zimbabwe, we call it grade 1 to form 4. And it is being run by a 16 strong volunteer team, which the one statistic that I like about our team is that 13 of the 16 people are below 35 and qualified to be youth. So this is something that has been heartwarming over this initiative, to see young people come together and offer the expertise and be the change the communities want. So we've been offering school. We've been offering school to our children. They have not lagged behind in any way, shape, or form, and they are actually eager to go back to school, knowing that whilst others were tapped into online platforms, they also tapped into their own kind of innovative learning during such a difficult time, but effective nonetheless. So, in a nutshell, that's pretty much what we've been doing. And it's been very heartwarming to see the communities come together and innovatively be the solutions the community needs and wants to see during a crisis. Yeah.
All right, there's some quite commendable work that you're doing there, Maureen. I've been fortunate enough to come twice to see for myself
Yeah.
the kind of food that you. And I must say
Yeah.
that I was very pleased, and the response that I even got from the stories that we wrote was amazing.
Yeah.
And now we come to I understand during this whole time you guys were dealing with widows, you were helping widows, you're dealing with young women issues. Please tell us the kind of work and the kind of action that you've been undertaking in Kenya.
Lovejoy, COVID reminded me of my community is a community that has suffered HIV and AIDS pandemic. So this is not the first pandemic that my community is undergoing. 70% of my community members are widows who are living with HIV and orphans. Poverty wears a widow's face. So the reality is more than just that COVID has hit home. It is that now women who are vulnerable before are going to be more vulnerable during and post this pandemic. There was a story immediately in March, early in March, that a widow was, profiled on national media that she was boiling stones for her children so that stones would boil longer and the children could fall asleep. That story sparked, my heart stirred, and I wondered how many of such widowed women would be able to not even put a meal on the table if you don't have food, a balanced diet, you are on ARVs, medication for HIV, you are at risk of even dying because of the health risk of the chemicals from the medication. So we immediately knew that what was needed was food. And so we launched a program that would provide food packs. And over time, up to now, we've provided 1,500 food packs to impacted 3,000 widowed households. But more importantly was how we trained our widow leaders to become caregivers to elderly, disabled, and women who ordinarily were now at risk. COVID is attacking more of a elderly population than a younger population. So these women their families were not working, if they're not receiving government support. So the needs were dire in terms of care and food support. So we went into the community, one, to provide the immediate need, immediate need intervention, which is food. But two, we discovered that there needed to be another layer of community providers. The health system, people are not going to hospital. People are still not going to hospital. Government clinics do not even have the kind of, the health sector in Africa generally, in Kenya in particular, in my community. You can't even find medication for malaria. So we added our food packs with the care packs that have soap, that have toothpaste, that have sanitary pads. We increased the number of dignity packs to our girls. We started girls mentorship program and mentoring over 150 girls right now, because these girls were in the village and the teen pregnancy numbers were going up like every day. So I wondered, the question I keep on asking, even the women and the duty bearers, will this village ever produce a girl like me? And so if we didn't do an intervention at that time, out of 10, 3 girls are pregnant. So we are looking at a population in a knowledge economy, young women and men who will not be able to go to school, who will be literate, just like their widowed mothers. So our interventions were 3 layers. One, direct intervention, the other is home-based care, and now we are at the third stage where we are looking at education and educating people to change their attitude about COVID, to obey COVID protocols. When a community has suffered another pandemic, and seeing people dying, and yet they are not seeing people dying with COVID, their reception to this information, their mistrust with government policies, doesn't allow them to really embrace the COVID rules and protocols that's being projected by they don't even trust the numbers. When money has been lost through corruption, people become resistant to receiving information. So we are going to the third layer of education. So over time, we are learning how to adjust with the COVID situation as it moves on. So I don't know whether we are in during or after, but we are also transitioning as the pandemic moves on. We are transitioning with the pandemic.
All right. Wow. The numbers that you're talking about, the teen pregnancies, the number of people living with HIV, they are quite high. They're high. And your intervention, I think, from my standpoint, I think you're doing well. You're in the right direction. But let's talk about the life of the people that you're helping right now, that you're interacting with. Their lives before the pandemic and now. how have they been impacted directly, especially with the COVID situation?
You know, Lovejoy and Maureen and I have discussed this before. Humanitarian aid and relief cannot last forever. People have to go to work to sustain their livelihoods. And from March to up to July, August, these women are in the informal economy. These women have a capital of less than, I think, $10, some of them. Even $10 is a lot for rural women. So if you don't go to the education level of showing them how to build back better, because we are talking about, the whole world is talking about building back better. When a woman is living in abject poverty, living with HIV and AIDS, and you're talking about a new pandemic, she really doesn't have no clue or even care about that new season. She has been, and Lovejoy, I've shared with Maureen, widowhood feels like a pandemic in itself. This feeling we've had right now, this surge feeling, this emotional breakdown, this all complex feeling of loss and enslavement, this is what widowhood feels like. So this is not a new feeling to these women. So they've seen it before. They've been deprived. They are poor. They have no food. They are stigmatized. They live in poverty. They live in a patriarchal society where a woman's worth is capped on her husband. Marriage is what qualifies you to be a dignified woman. So these are the community of women. And if your mother is vulnerable widows equal to vulnerable daughters. So it goes without saying that poverty will wear a widow's face, long-term, immediate, and now. So if you don't look at a holistic approach of how to do interventions with these women, then a society, even the SDGs will never be achieved. With gender equality, education for girls, infrastructure does not exist. We are talking about roads that don't exist. I saw the road in Kwekwe when Maureen posted the schools, and I'm like, this looks like my own village. This is where I grew up. I could easily walk into that village and succeed. So we are not talking, these are women who will never be on the table. Digital divide, these are illiterate, unbankable, and resourceful, yet during COVID, they are the ones who are holding the society together through the informal economy and the government programs. So if you don't bring them on the table to talk about rights, to talk about policy, to talk about resource allocation, and to talk about representation, you're completely missing out, even if you are implementing what structural programs. So these are the kind of women we are impacting. And besides that, we run a community school, the only one that exists. And this came from our discussion with Maureen, how we were, also supporting each other. Maureen and I have been supporting each other through all this program. Because the burden of leadership in a pandemic situation as a grassroots community leader is heavy. It's very heavy. The expectations are unimaginable. The needs are overwhelming. If you don't find a support system, you can easily cage down. So we started a community school, and our community school, even just last week, doing good has cost me trouble. I ended up in a police custody for not having, our school not having police COVID rules and not having wash areas and all these things. So good trouble is also around you all the time. So if you look at the community you are serving and the work you're doing, the burden on yourself as a leader, it breaks you down, and yet you also have to survive the pandemic. So it's a really delicate situation to be in as a grassroots women leader.
All right. Interesting deliberations there from Rosalie. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and we are forever grateful that this we can hear another side. We are just used to our Zimbabwean context, and while we stay here, we think maybe this is our own struggle, because this is also the same thing that are happening in Zimbabwe, probably at a much larger scale than you guys. But all the same, we appreciate you coming to the program and sharing with us. Maureen, I'll come to you, and let's talk about access to education during the COVID time. As of now, we've seen government opening schools in batches. We started with Form 4, with upper sixes, grade sevens, exam classes, so to speak. And now we are moving into the other classes, the lower classes. But we have got those guys who have not been able to attend classes probably from March and now, and they are being forced to go back to school and write exams. And you have got your community of trust. How did it bridge the gap between the children who are not able to go to school and who are now going back to school, but with a bit of knowledge, and those who were not able to access the kind of education that you offer.
Yeah. Thanks, Lovejoy. And thanks, Roslyn, for sharing your insights. As you were speaking, I always get reminded how we might be in different countries, but we are almost very similar. So, Lovejoy, back to your question. Before lockdown, these children would just loiter in the streets before the initiative, so to speak. The children would just loiter in the streets. They did not have textbooks. Getting textbooks in itself is very expensive, and they did not have extra money because their fathers or the parents were either miners or informal traders, and because of the lockdown, income had dropped drastically because of the mobility restrictions that came to. So these children had no hope in as far as where else they could get education. And having myself being someone who has come into face to face with lack or disadvantage, and knowing how it is to come from a point where you can't access something, this really pained me, and we started this initiative, and we've been doing it for 6 months, and as you can see, and you came and witnessed that we have quality teachers, expert teachers, qualified teachers who help our children with the curricula. As we speak right now, as classes are opening, the 114 children who are part of our initiative are more than eager to go back to school. Unfortunately, for the 114, they are now part of the privileged people who had access to such initiatives. But there's so many people, sadly to say, who could not have access. And my heart goes to these people. And what we've learned around this is that our system, even before COVID happened, was exclusionary in nature. Because even when we did our lessons, we uncovered that our public education system did not cater enough for these children. We had people who tell you that in our class, there are about 60 of us and one teacher. So the teacher hardly has time to pay attention to that child who comes to school late and hungry with burdens of responsibilities that they do not know from home. And our school provided that space where we could interact with the child on a one-to-one basis, where the ratio was about 1 to 10 at most. So I feel that and the quality of education that we've been giving through our selfless volunteer teachers has bridged the gap, and so many participants are very eager to go back to school. But I need to say, as we say they're going back to school, the situation is not back to normal. And as Community Hope Trust, we are now grappling with the fact that the government is saying our schools should open, but in public schools, which serve the majority of poor people that come from my community, they are ill prepared insofar as safety resources for like PPE and sanitizers. The teachers are not there because they are on a strike. So the situation, unlike what would want it to look like, is not yet normal. And whilst all of this is going through, the impact is coming back to the children. And one thing that we are grappling with is we're trying to get the message across to say, at the end of the day, the primary focus should be on the children, and any solution that we seek, any negotiations, any engagements that we embark on should also hold the children at the center of everything, because the children are suffering. They need to go back to school. Education is their right, and they've suffered.
Okay, Maureen, once again, she's letting us
Lost
down with the
Maureen.
network. All right.
Long enough. Thankfully for our children, it hasn't been much.
Oh, we lost you again.
I'm here.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, Maureen, we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
I was just winding up and saying that our children are eager, like I said, but the battle is far from over. Inequalities still do exist structurally in the public school sphere in Zimbabwe, and the majority of the children that come from my community, whilst they might be eager to go back to school, are still going to be faced with the inequalities that they were impressed with before the start of the pandemic. And it is important for our government and teachers and other interested stakeholders to ensure that every intervention puts children at the center and tries to respect their right to education.
All right. Please clarify for me. Are these extra lessons where students have to pay, where kids have to pay, or you're offering this for free?
So apparently these are not the usual, because when you talk about extra lessons in Zimbabwe, people automatically think of paying $10 a month. And like I said, the community that I live in, the men are either makorokoza or artisanal miners, and the women before the lockdown were vendors or informal traders crossing the border, and with restricted mobility, their income is drastically reduced. So our extra lessons, not extra lessons in the normal sense where people pay, they are free, but free in the sense that parents contribute what they can. They contribute space, they contribute soap, they contribute ash, they contribute their time, but we don't make people pay, and we do not turn away children should they not pay, unlike what has become normal where people have to pay a monthly fee for their children to get school. So we don't make them pay in that regard.
So this is where the community hope trust comes in now. The word community.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
So I wanted to just say, during this pandemic, we then discovered that the hope is in the community. Should we emancipate ourselves from anything, hence the name Community Hope Trust.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting. As we continue with the program, please, those who are watching, if you've got your questions, please comment on the comment section, and we'll read them out a little later on. Because we want the engagement from the people. We want to hear what you think about the kind of work that these guys are doing in Zimbabwe and in Kenya. I've got some questions there, but I'll share with you in a moment. I'll come to Rosalind. Before we came to the program, we were talking about the risks associated with the kind of work that you guys are doing. It's also a question to Maureen, but I'll let Rosalind go first. The risks associated with the kind of work that you're doing. Please take us through this. You said something. Are you free now to talk about it?
The risk is high, Lovejoy, and it's funny how the expectations around offering, COVID has proven that local challenges require local solutions. The supply chain is broken, no travel, borders are closed. So you cannot, like our mission at Rona Foundation is supporting widows and orphans. So therefore, if you go home and you are in a pandemic and you are in a lockdown yourself as a leader, as a director, as a founder, then what does that exactly mean? Do you also run away when these people need you most? Churches closed. Everywhere you look around, nobody's showing face. So when you begin to see the need and the scope of what you need to offer as a solution in a pandemic, it is overwhelming. You can't even begin to breathe. So the risk is over expectations. How do you, with so little, where you have the needs yourself, but you have to offer those solutions to those with more needs than yourself. Over expectations is so high. You don't know whose toes you are walking on. You can't know. You are tiptoeing. You are walking on eggshells every minute, every day. You don't know whether with the lockdown and COVID protocols and rules, the government is going to say you are no longer allowed to distribute food because you are risking the lives of elderly women. There is also lack of resources. Globally, we are talking about COVID funding, COVID rapid response. But how much of that COVID rapid response reached Kwekwe or reached my rural village in Wagoma in Siaya County in Western Kenya? Where does that money go to? Does it go to the people who need it most? Does it go to Maria, who broke her leg for 2 years? And if we didn't distribute the food, we couldn't reach her. She was with a broken leg for 2 years in her house, without a wheelchair, without all her children died because of HIV. So offering local solutions is what COVID is requiring us to do. And while I'm seeing that maybe people are beginning to get interested, INGOs, international community, are beginning to get interested in what grassroots organizations are doing, it takes forever to even break to those global platforms. It takes forever to give proof of evidence that Maureen School is a model. We modeled the Rona Center, which is an early childhood school, to a community school. We now have almost 89 children in the school with 2 teachers that are paid throughout. 4 other volunteer teachers who are university students. If I didn't model that school to offer that solution from Maureen's innovation, but how long did it take Maureen to even get that innovation to be in a space where we could model it? Could it be also funded further to be able to be, replicated in other communities like Kwekwe, like my own? And there's so many similarities between Zimbabwe and Kenya. So the
Mm.
expectations are too much on it. When you are a woman leader, and you are a widow yourself, without a husband, without a protecting barrier, you don't come from the right family, the risks are even higher. You don't even know
Yeah,
who's fighting it. You don't know the battles. You don't know the source of your battles. Gender barriers are erected at every stage. You are every day, either you will be arrested or you will be unaccepted or you will be
yeah,
attacked. And
yeah,
cyberbullying for women in leadership is so high that every day you are trusting your instinct that I'm doing the right thing. You can never know. And even for you to join the club of organizations that are now qualified to get the big funding, you will have worked your ass off. So all
yeah,
these are barriers, and every day you want to break them. Every day you're fighting to. You will, even if your innovation is the best, somebody else in the global platform would rather use it to give us an example, but you will never be in the room. So
yeah,
the risks are everywhere, from
yeah.
resources, expectation, to acceptance, to global space, to local space, and because you are a woman.
Wow.
Oh my God,
Interesting.
Rosalie. Yeah,
That I also that these initiatives are being led by women, and we are in a patriarchal society, but women are taking up leadership roles to emancipate people, so to speak. And this is where I say, well done, guys. Right,
mm,
Maureen, I'll also post the same question to you. I remember when I came to Kwekwe the other time, you were talking about the local MP not being that supportive, the local councillors, and a whole lot of things that you were saying. They
yeah,
need to be placed, but things are not moving the same pace that you wanted. Please take us
yeah.
through the kind of risks that you faced from the time you set up the organization up until now.
Yeah, thank you, Lovejoy. And Rosaline, the way you spoke, you took me back to that space of pain, because I can tell you, as much as this work is fulfilling, it's also very painful and
Yes.
emotionally, physically, and mentally draining. It comes with its sort of, with its share of risks, to the self, to the community, to even to the beneficiaries themselves. So you find that Zimbabwe is a political economy is quite unstable. There's been a number of unrest during the pandemic. So because of the political polarization and the unrest in the political economy that we currently live in, there are high security risks that come with interventions such as this. And you're right to say, Lovejoy, I did face a bit of resistance when, from police, when they came and just, without wanting to understand what is going on, without checking to see whether or not we were conforming to World Health Organization guidelines, but just to merely intimidate us. And police came to the school, tried to uh, swindle money out of us and threatened that they were going to shut us down with no foundation at all, and such a risk that we have to deal with. And when the police did come, we also needed to protect the beneficiaries, because I feel for the group that we're working with, that is children of ages about 8 to about 16, they needed not to be exposed to such harsh environments. So security risks are rife, and especially where working in a country where civil society organization or any community-based organization such as Community Hope Trust are viewed with a view of trying to do things other than what they say they want to do. So it comes high with security risks that we're to deal with and we're confronted with. I also want to say that this comes with financial risks as well, because I know that Rosaline is very familiar with the concept of giving from an empty cup. So I can tell you that the 16 volunteers, myself included, during this initiative, were giving to a community from an empty cup, from a cup that actually needed filling in. So there you are, you're trying to solve a solution, but in yourself, you need help and intervention and assistance. So this is one risk that I've come confronted me personally, where children come and you don't have funding and you need to feed them. And COVID, for example, the number of grants that were formulated by our government do not trickle down in an urgent manner as the communities need them. And the burden comes to you as people look to you as a community leader. So you have no option but to sit in an empty cup and give whatever little that you have to the community. So the financial risks that come with it and the burden that comes with it financially are quite high. And in terms of emotional risk, emotional burdens, oh my God, this is emotional work. For you to be able to help communities, you must be connected to communities. And I think this comes back to Rosalind's issue of community solutions coming from people that are tuned in and plugged into the communities. So having been part of the community also becomes emotionally draining, that it becomes risky to your own mental and physical health. I'll tell you of an incident where we lost one of our beneficiaries from a short illness, and the parent had nowhere to go. They came running to my house and started wailing when they got into my house to tell me that their child had passed on. And you could tell that they needed assistance. And the emotional toll that came to me, it was as if my own child had also died. So being a community leader also comes with emotional burdens that you need constant care for. And I'm happy to have you, Lovejoy, and to have Rosalind, as well as the wider community, for example, such as the Atlantic Fellowship of Social and on Social and Economic Equity, as support systems that can always re-energize you as you go. But I think, yeah, we do need community connectedness, as Tanyaraza was talking about, to carry you through. Otherwise, this is painful yet impactful work.
All right, interesting. To the viewers, thank you so much. We are seeing comments. We are seeing questions as well. Right now, I'll go to the questions, and there's a question for you, Maureen, from Craig Tinashe Dube. I'm sure you guys know each other. He says, "Is there a gap created children? What is there a gap created children access education now, probably through private extra lessons versus those who can't afford? What is the potential impact on kids who are missing out now?" That's for you, Maureen.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get Craig's number. Hello, Craig. Good to see you on the platform. I didn't quite get his question.
Which I believe, okay, he says, is there a gap created where children accessing education now, probably through private extra lessons versus those who can't afford? And then what is the potential impact on kids who are missing out now?
Yeah. So the gap, coronavirus and this pandemic, what it did is just expose crevices that already existed. And thanks, Craig, the gap does exist. And I must say, it must have widened during this pandemic, except for the 114 children that we were part of the initiative. I will tell you that if you do not afford an extra lesson, you do not get quality education when you go back into the classroom, and you can't afford quality education. That is a lifelong consequences on your ability to tap into any other opportunities. And this is the reason why we started this initiative, because we could see that without the foundation of education, some people will forever be excluded. And you are going to be excluded in the job market, you're going to be excluded in society, you're going to be excluded in your families. So the gap is indeed there, and I feel it has widened because of the extra lessons. Those who can afford have opportunities abundant for them to access lifelong opportunities, and those who don't, sadly, will forever.
We lost her.
Okay, we wait for her.
We lost her.
Okay, maybe we can
left behind. And like I said, I know what it is to be excluded merely because of the circumstances or the Okay, I am so sorry. I was saying that because this initiative is close to my heart, because I know what it is to be excluded based on your geography or based on the social status that you come from. I feel that the gap has really left people behind, and the consequences we are not going to just feel today, but we're going to feel generations and generations from today, maybe 20, 25, 30 years from now. And it's sad.
All right. Okay, another comment has come through from the Atlantic Fellows for Social and Economic Equity, and they're saying really inspiring to hear from our fellows Oral and Maurice Sidoke about how they and their communities are working to make a difference. sounds like challenges in Kenya and Zim are similar. And there's also almost a similar comment from Craig again. It says, wow, the similarities are just uncanny, Rosalie. I think it is important that we share how to deal with them like this. Another comment from Tanya Charles. It says women leadership very challenging in patriarchal settings. And Tanyara Gondaima talks about community connectedness, and she says, guys, Craig is back again. He says the mental burden on communities always goes unnoticed. Such a shame. We thank you guys for tuning in and commenting and asking our panelists this question. Now I'll move on to Rosalie because of time. We've got about 10 minutes to go. You were talking about the risks, right? I'll take you back. The other issue that comes to mind, maybe from a viewer's point of view, or maybe from the authorities' point of view, is the facilities themselves that you guys are operating on. Are they COVID-proof? Are they COVID-19 proof? Are they conducive to be operating from under these circumstances?
Very good question. Right now, we are making them COVID compliant. Right now, we are making our projects and community center in rural Kenya, in Western Kenya, to be COVID compliant. But what does that mean? It actually means resources. It actually means, investing in infrastructure development, structural development. It actually means money. It is easy for a COVID response fund, even a fundraising for beneficiaries to be given food. But it's not easy to fundraise for a toilet. To say we want 10 toilets, it's not easy because people want stories that they can relate to. They don't want stories that you're going to take 1-2 months to build a toilet. So it's a shift in the mindset. As we are challenged by this situation, we are also challenged by how we are responding to it in terms of how do you even educate your local and international donors and sponsors to see that the situation is not only food, it is also infrastructure, it is also structural, it's space. I remember, Maureen, the first day you posted a photo of just having stones and the children sitting on stones to learn. We are looking at investment that would ordinarily have come from the government. It doesn't come. It will never reach these communities. So that taking time to educate your network that the need is beyond just this food we are donating. It is also exiting our beneficiaries that are used to now this relief food and humanitarian aid support to know that this funding is going to end. It's painful to end this program of food. It is very painful. You are leaving these widows with nothing. So the risks are those ones. So how do you then translate the need of when you have like a government notice, like for us right now, we have a 21-day government notice to implement the COVID health and education protocols to have more toilets. How do you meet that need within those 21 days without breaking your bone or breaking your heart? One of my friends, who is also an activist in Benin, told me last week that grassroots community work is breaking your heart to be broken. Every day you're breaking your heart so that your heart can be broken, either by your partners, either by your funders, or by the people you impact, or by your own self. When you can't meet the needs, you are in trouble, like I have been in trouble. So the risks are those ones. If you come back to educating the donor community, that right now, Lovejoy, and Maureen, this is an awakening I got today. It is easy to fund beneficiary needs, but it is not easy to fund admin cost. And money doesn't move, money doesn't walk, money won't take the food, money won't write on the chalkboard. Money alone can't do it. People who work in these organizations will do it. The volunteer teachers will do it. The volunteer staff at Rona will do it. Who funds those people? Who cares about those people? And then you talk about corruption in the long term, but you refuse to put resources on these human beings. And their children are starving. So you are meeting one need and ignoring the other. So those are the risks involved. Do you put yourself on the salary when you have $500 to impact your school? Do you put yourself on a salary? Or do you put your teachers? Or do you buy chalk and blackboard? So these are all risks around this work. You don't know when it is the right thing, and you don't know when the thing will be interpreted to be wrong. Yet you know this is the right way to go. It is hard work. I enjoy the work I do. I really enjoy the work I do. But I know the risk on health, the emotional burden, and the legal risks and government rules that it comes with it. I am more aware than I was 10 years ago. Having gone through this COVID crisis that I'm undergoing now, I am more aware that even in doing good, you will be in trouble.
Interesting. The most important thing that you mentioned here is that you enjoy doing your work despite all the risks that are coming through. But at the end of the day, you can go home and feel okay that you have helped a soul or two, that you have helped your community, that you have helped a woman attain something in her life. And that is the most important thing there. Maureen, I'll come to you. Maureen, are you there?
Yes, I am. I can hear you.
Okay, let's also talk about the same risks that Roslyn was talking about, right? You have faced your own risks, right? And you have faced community resistance, so to speak. I remember the first time that I came here, you talked about parents not being able to bring their children. That's also one of the risks that is connected there. How have you managed to turn that to your positive gains?
Yeah. So one parent was very blunt in one of our our first feedback meeting with the parents since we started, and explained that at first was very skeptical about the project and thought I was a Satanist or I was part of a cult interested to recruit from the pool of children, because I could understand, because when you're coming from a community where community action is usually is usually loaded with sinister intentions, either to siphon funding from somewhere in the European countries. I guess that's where they're coming from, And yes, relationships have since turned, and I think what makes relationships turn is the understanding of the fact that leadership is about building relations. Leadership is being accountable to yourself. Leadership is about being vulnerable in front of people to get them to understand that you are also part of the community, and you do understand where they come from. So I think part of turning around the initial skeptical views involved me going to the community, presenting myself as a community member and showing them that indeed I was part of the community member. I was alive to exclusion. I was alive to being disadvantaged. And when they understand that, they can sort of then gravitate towards you and become cooperative. I really wanted to speak to something that Roslyn spoke to about COVIDizing or COVID proofing the space. One thing that I learned during this time was the use of indigenous knowledge systems. We were lucky that we got grants, and these grants gave priority to getting sanitary PPE and COVID proofing the space. But it was not enough for us to sustain us to run for the 7 months that we've run. And part of us COVIDizing or COVID proofing the space has been leveraging on indigenous knowledge systems. So we've got people with no scientific chemical background like I do, telling you that perhaps if we do not have sanitizer, we can use ash. And from my scientific background, I then can relate to say ash is alkaline, and when it reacts with water, it then kills germs. You know what I mean? So one thing that I now have learned is that we have a lot of knowledge within communities in form of indigenous knowledge system that is not recorded, that is not heralded, that is not celebrated. And I think my key learning from then is to realize communities are awash with knowledge, are awash with richness. They might not be material, but they are very present. We just need to be innovative and deliberately bring them out to the core, because we have not recorded, not even a flu case, because the women in our community would make some herbal tea in the morning. If you ever felt you had a headache or you were coming down with a fever, So the indigenous knowledge system that was in my community was amazing. And I believe that going forth in future crises, we need to continue tapping into indigenous knowledge systems for us to be able to build resilience when we're faced with crisis. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you so much. And as we go ahead, we want to also invite other people who want to be on the program next time, so that they can get in touch with us. Get in touch with us on 263 Chat. That's on our Facebook 263 Chat. And then It's Choose Richards as well on Twitter, or you can get in touch with me, Lovejoy Visa, on my Facebook. That's Lovejoy, and then it's LJ Matt on Twitter. Maureen seems to be having problems there, so I'll go to Rosaline. Rosaline, let's talk about now. Let's shift focus to COVID response in Kenya, from the government perspective, or even from the community perspective. How has Kenya managed to sort of localize COVID and make it your baby and deal with it from your point of view?
Very good question. I have two views to it. One is from where I sit as a widow leader. COVID is a widow-making machine. More men are dying than women. And those widows, as a neglected, vulnerable, and category of women, would still not be able to access the support needed for them, both policy-wise, resource-wise, representation-wise, in deep cultural beliefs and widowhood practices that are long-standing, that deny women their rights and choice and their voice, and just cutting them off from development and socioeconomic participation. So that is my view, that being a widow-making machine, here we are going to find millions and millions of women, widowed women, COVID widows across the globe, across Africa, who do not even have the kind of support. When I was widowed 10 years ago, my community and friends and my sister and family were around me to grieve with me. These women don't even have support system. COVID bodies are buried in the middle of the night. There was a big community resistance when one musician in my community was buried twice. The community came and removed the body, and it was buried again, police brutality. So all that was the first phase of COVID. This phase of COVID is where we are seeing the government has lost funding, and communities are also people need to go. Kenya is a hand-to-mouth economy, and a large population of Kenyans eat from hand to mouth. So they need to go to work every day, wash clothes, sell vegetables on the roadside. Looking at middle class, have lost their jobs. People are selling tomatoes and eggs and onions in their cars. You find people park their Mercedes Benz and four-wheel drive vehicles selling tomatoes. So the local woman who sells vegetables near our office here is having competitors who drive in with their big cars. So the informal economy is crowded. There are new competitors. So have we localized COVID to our situation? We have, but we are poorer than we were before. We will be more at the backside. We will go lower than we were. We will be more neglected, abandoned, and forgotten as a widowed community and as women than we were before. The youth, where will they find the jobs? In my community, you're looking at fishermen. If with a lake that is Lake Victoria is perished, there's no fish. With no education, where do you go from here? In an economy where it's all digital, and yet you don't have the skills and knowledge and even the resources to access this platform. The cost of data, the cost of Wi-Fi. I mean, the infrastructure around COVID is reminding you how poor you are. So if that is what localizing means, that is what we are going through. The government has done its best, I believe, to disseminate knowledge, to be present. For the first time, Lovejoy, we saw the face of our government. Some people have never seen the people they elected. We saw our president present. We saw our minister of health. So we realized, this is what government means. Government is now giving direction and leadership. For that, I give them kudos. Could they do better? I believe they had enough resources to do better and to trickle down to our communities. Also looking at the global platform, Maureen and I are fellows at Atlantic Institute Social and Economic Equity. We have received enormous support. Tanya has been supporting us, organizing platforms, educating us, bringing us on board. The Atlantic Institute has granted us, Maureen and I, a grant to be able to connect more. These are spaces that ordinarily we would not be present if we didn't have that global connection. A solidarity grant was given to Rona Foundation by Atlantic Institute to support this food distribution. So if we look at the large scale, it's not all gloom and doom. We got support locally and globally, and for that we are really grateful. But going
All right.
forward, I want to add this, Lovejoy. Going forward, I really believe development, democracy, and rights would need to have a holistic approach, both to support the organization sustainability, and beneficiary impact. They need to go in tandem.
Okay. All right. I think the trick there to what you're saying, Rosalind, is adapting to your environment, adapting to the current situation that we are faced with. And I think as the youth as well, we have a role to play, be it COVID or no COVID, we actually have something to play in our economies. And hopefully, your government officials post COVID will continue to show their faces so that they do not become strangers to you and your communities. And in wrapping up now, I know you had gone into the post COVID, so I'll come to Maureen and then I'll come back to you, Rosalind. Maureen, now we are sort of going back to our normal lives, and this means that schools are opening. And for organizations like yours, for startups like the one that you had come up with, what is the future? Where do you think you will go, seeing that things are normalizing?
Yeah. So thanks, Lovejoy. I need to say three things, and I need to emphasize on this. The future is in the community. The future is with women. The future is with young people, you know. And I can never overemphasize this, particularly in the African context. And this COVID pandemic, what it has uncovered is that we need to build more resilience at a grassroots level. In case we get to a point where there's mobility restrictions, do we have communities that are empowered to actually build to build a resistance to such a crisis? So again, the future is in the community. The future is with women, and the future is with young people. Going forward, as we were doing this collective homeschool initiative, we uncovered a lot of related issues, you know, that have a direct impact on quality education that a child receives. We also noted that in Zimbabwe, you don't need only academic education, but you also need to augment it with non-academic life skills for you to survive. So uncovering all of this gives us basis for us to continue in the future. As Community Hope Trust, we intend to continue doing our programming to support those who do not have adequate educational resources such as school fees, uniforms, and all of that. But we also need to augment it with programs that seek to build life skills within our young people, so that by the time you graduate from O level or A level, you can start your own business. You can see the family enterprise through and create jobs in the process. We uncovered that there's a lot of obscurity when it comes to sexual reproductive health, issues of exclusion, gender equality within the community, as we live in a very patriarchal society. As Community Hope Trust, we intend to have projects and programs that speak to encouraging or building a sense of equality, a sense of inclusion within the community, because we can't start preaching equality and not leaving anyone behind at a national level when in the family we don't speak to the same ethos. So as Community Hope Trust, we see ourselves in a space where we can continue having conversations that matter, that can help build a wholesome young person who's ready to enter a job market or to enter the business realm or even be a social change leader, you know. So we are hoping to just confront a number of issues that also augment formal education by having a number of projects that we are going to be doing in the future. So the future is again in the community, the future is with women, and the future is with young people.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Maureen, for those deliberations. And quickly, Rosalind, the future of your organization, the Rona Trust.
I agree completely. The future is in the community. The future is empowering more women to be able to take leadership positions in their community. And that does not mean elective leadership position. It actually means you can organize your own village and have a widow group and do a savings and loaning and run a revolving fund and be able to start your small businesses.
Yeah.
The future is also with the education, but what kind of education? You know, we are used to
Yeah.
saying in Kenya, education for all. We are also talking about technical training, tailoring,
Yeah.
carpentry. We are talking about plumbing. We are talking and bringing those to the community. We at Rona Foundation, we are really looking at building a TVET, what the Kenyan government calls TVET, technical training, and bringing all this plumbing, carpentry, tailoring to the community, so that you don't have to travel to the city, Nairobi,
Yeah.
400 kilometers away to get this basic education that can change your life. So that's where our future is. And we are also wanting a school, a model school, modeling on
Yeah.
what's happening in Kwekwe. We can actually build our own private community school, which is allowed under our government laws. So looking at the future of that, do women and girls really, rural women and girls really have to go live with relatives in the city? Hell no. They can access these services in the community. I
Yeah.
am looking at a holistic approach, infrastructural, humanitarian, rights, democracy, and to revive those communities to build better. You can't do one without the other. That is what I'm
Yeah.
looking at.
All right. Thank you so much, my panelists for today, Rosaline and Maureen. But before I go, I just need probably one word or one comment from you guys. We have seen over the past few months, there's a rise in the Black Lives Matter movement, the Zimbabwe Lives Matter. Recently, we had End SARS in Nigeria. And, this is part of the global problem currently
Yeah.
ongoing on top of the coronavirus that we have. What do you guys have to say about some of these challenges that we're facing within the current challenge that we have?
Yeah.
Maureen?
Oh my God, these are very emotive issues. And I think even when we deal with educational inequalities, we can't do it in a context where we are blind to these realities. We have to be cognizant and appreciate the fact that we live in a very exclusionary economy. In a very exclusionary global world where the emphasis has been to enrich the few at the expense of the minority. And we live in a world that views something that is not familiar to you as the other. We now live in a world that is so polarized to a fact that it doesn't embrace political diversity or the freedom of speech. And for me, I think again it comes back to the community. I think we need to press reset, and start looking at what ethics, what values are we instilling in our children, so that when they grow up, they also then embrace the fact that we are at the end of the day all equal, irrespective of color, creed, religion, political persuasion, And it's said, my heart goes to the victims of the who have fallen prey in America because of racism. My heart goes and bleeds to the comrades in Nigeria who've lost lives because of the police brutality, simply because they dared to stand up. My heart goes with the millions of Zimbabweans that I share a beautiful country with, who just want a decent life. And I think, again, I cannot overemphasize this. We need to press reset and say, what kind of human being are we bringing up within the community? And you find that the community becomes the center of transforming the world as we see it, because the world as we see it has got nothing really to admire. We need to do better.
Okay.
Very
Profound.
well
Profound.
put.
Rosaline?
This matter and the matters of violence, and whether they are racial or they are political or they are gender, are very personal to me. I am a widow of the post-election violence in Kenya in 2008. So when you talk about violence, I know what it means firsthand.
Yeah.
I know I am a victim turning victor. And it's difficult to separate my feelings from the situation. I try to, but it's still as painful as it was 10 years ago. What do we have to do? We have to unlearn those in political leadership, those in elective leadership. We have to unlearn to readjust. COVID has given us a chance to unlearn to readjust. We have to learn to forgive. We have to learn to see the world through the eyes of the person who doesn't look like us, through the person who doesn't speak my tribal language, through the
Yeah.
person who doesn't eat the kind of food I eat. Through the person whose story I know may be painful, but I refuse to relate. Sometimes I wonder, are we afraid of losing power and money? Is it cash or color? What is it that we are really afraid of? And in the context of our continent, in Africa, have we really decolonized our minds to be able to embrace brotherhood, to be able to embrace Ubuntu, and build our societies and communities together? I think the story of Maureen and I are one such story across the world. Two different women across East and Southern Africa, rising from the ashes, picked by pure grace to be able to lead change in their communities. And to me, such stories give me hope that I think about Nigeria now. I believe there needs to be a stop to it. We can do it. We will do it. Even if we take 1 day, 2 days, 1 year, we need to begin to unlearn, to decolonize our minds, to embrace each other. Because it is also one thing, Lovejoy, to be Black and talk about Black Lives Matter. But it is another thing to be a Black African woman. It is worse than being just Black.
Okay, interesting. I think this is another topic that maybe giving enough time, we can always come back and talk about, because I think it's one issue that is so dear to us as Africans, to us as people of color, to us people who are not really tolerated on that side of the world. And I think we might have a session regards this sometime. But all the same, from your deliberations about this issue, I think we need tolerance, we need unity, and we need peace for us to work together so that we achieve our goals. And remember, the United Nations is talking about leaving no one behind. We cannot work together if we've got so many divisions, if we don't tolerate each other, if we don't unite, and if we don't stand in solidarity with each other. But that said, guys, it's been an honor to have you on the program. Thank you so much, Rosaline and Maureen. I know you guys are busy. You've got your schedules, but you decided to come on the program all the way from Kenya, all the way from Kwekwe. Thank you so much, guys. I could not be more appreciative than I am right now. And God bless you, and God bless your endeavors. We hope to see you some other time in other programs. And may your works, please, may your works continue to be a fruit.
Thank you, Lovejoy.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Rosaline. It's always a pleasure sharing a platform with you.
All right. That said, my name is Lovejoy. If you would like to get in touch with us, maybe for marketing, for advertising, please get in touch with Samuel at 263chat.com. You'll be there, or call him on 0717-516-562. He will be there to assist you. My name is Lovejoy Mtongeza. The program was Meet the Press with Lovejoy. Join me in other programs. Thank you so much.